Yep, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the British Columbia Museums Association webinar. My name is Lorenda Calvert, and I will be your host for today. Today's webinar topic is Resume and Interviewing Tips for Tourism and Hospitality Jobs, presented by Ginger Bruner, Regional HR Specialist. And Ginger is joining us from GoToHR, and this webinar is delivered in partnership with GoToHR. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that as an organization of provincial scope, the BCMA recognizes that its members, today's presenter, and attendees occupy the lands and territories of BC's Indigenous peoples. We ask all of you to reflect on the places where you reside and work and to respect the diversity of cultures and experiences that form its richness. As I mentioned, I'm Lorenda Calvert, your host for today. I am also the BCMA's Programs Coordinator. My pronouns are she, her, and I want to thank you for joining us today. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please do email our office. Vanessa, our operations manager, is standing by to assist. A small bit of housekeeping before we begin. Please use the chat feature to ask questions or make comments. I will read your comment or question out to the host. There will be some time reserved at the end of this presentation for Q&A. However, if you do have something that pops up that's pertinent to what Ginger is sharing, feel free to write that in the chat or the Q&A, and I will read that out to her. Also, if you have a really good question and you don't want to forget it, feel free to write that in the chat and Q&A, and we'll make sure that we cover that at the end. The chat feature may be hidden on your screen, so you just need to hover your mouse at the top or bottom of your screen, and a taskbar should emerge. On that taskbar, you should also be able to see a closed captioning button. We do have closed captioning today provided by a live transcription service. If the closed captioning button is not working for you, or if you are unable to find it, you should see a Live on Otter AI button in the top left-hand corner of your window. If you click on that button, it will take you to a separate web page in your browser where you can read the live transcription along with the presentation today. As I mentioned, this month's presenter is Ginger Bruner, a Regional HR Specialist with GoToHR. And Ginger, I'm going to pass it on to you now.
Great, thanks, Lorenda. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen with everyone. Lorenda, can you just confirm that you can see that?
I can see it, looks great.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. We're really pleased to be here today. Thanks to Lorenda and the BC Museums Association for hosting us. And the presentation today that we have for you is the Resume and Interviewing Skills and Tips for Tourism and Hospitality Jobs. The agenda for today, what we're going to walk through is I will just give you an introduction to GoToHR for anyone who isn't familiar with us. We'll talk about some of the reasons to work in tourism, and I'll give you a glimpse into the BC tourism industry and really have just a quick high-level overview of the impact of COVID-19 and the state of where we are currently with regards to employment and future employment in the industry. And then we'll talk specifically about cover letters, resumes, video interviews, and give you some tips and resources to help you make sure that your information really stands out in a crowd and being able to really put your best foot forward when you're applying for jobs in the tourism industry. And of course, there will be some resources and again, tips as we go through. So let's get right into it. As Lorenda said, if you have questions, please feel free to submit them. We'll direct the questions and respond to them at the end of the session here. For anyone who isn't already familiar with GoToHR, if you haven't visited our website already, I would firstly encourage you to do so. GoTo is the Human Resource Association and Health and Safety Association for the BC tourism industry. We're an industry-led nonprofit organization, and we work directly with tourism and hospitality employers and other industry stakeholders around the province to provide guidance, resources, and support in the areas of human resources, health and safety, industry-related training, as well as research. labor market information and strategies. So our work is specifically geared for the BC tourism and hospitality industry, the BC Museums Association, very much an important stakeholder for us, and of course, all of you that are either working in or wanting to work for the tourism industry. When we think about the BC tourism industry and we talk about tourism and hospitality jobs, a lot of folks instantly think of frontline positions that we see in hotels or we see them in restaurants. And sometimes we don't necessarily think about the jobs that are behind the scenes. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite quotes when I talk about career awareness in the tourism industry is this one from Mark Twain: "Find a job that you enjoy doing and you will never have to work a day in your life." My career path started in tourism when I was way back in high school, and I have spent almost my entire career either working directly in hotels or restaurants or event centers across Canada, and then as well through my human resources field, working directly with industry employers and human resources. I've also been an instructor at Camosun College, where I instructed within the tourism industry and a leadership program. And really, any opportunity that I have to share all of the exciting career opportunities within the BC tourism industry, I absolutely value the opportunity to do so. This quote speaks firsthand to me. I love what I do, working in tourism, working in human resources, and it's pretty amazing what you get to be able to experience. The BC tourism industry as a whole has over 400 occupations in tourism. So lots of different positions, again, from those frontline positions that we tend to think of firsthand, but also there are positions behind the scenes that are really critical to helping businesses run. Positions like accounting and administration, the trades and technical positions. So there are lots. The industry provides a pretty incredible opportunity, not only for a job, but a lifestyle. If we think of ski resorts right now, there are people that will travel around the country and, work at a ski resort in the wintertime and then go work at a golf resort or a whale watching tour in the summertime and then move to another ski resort in the wintertime. So lots of different opportunity. It's also a really great chance to share our culture, our heritage, our community with folks. And the museums are a great example of that. Being able to provide and share our history with visitors that are curious to learn about our province and our country. We get to meet people from all over the world, interacting, learning about their cultures as well as sharing ours. And it's very rewarding being able to work in an industry that provides lots of opportunities for career advancement and different experiences no matter where you go. Now, having said all of that, we know that COVID-19 has had an impact on the tourism industry, and many of you have probably seen the news and heard about how much COVID is impacting hotels and restaurants primarily have been in the news a lot. A lot of operators, there's no doubt, not just in tourism, but across the country, across the world, have been impacted by COVID-19. And I thought this is a great opportunity to share with you some interesting data that came recently from Tourism HR Canada. And you can go onto their site and you can actually find a lot more information related to this and career perspectives, but I wanted to be able to mention this at a high level today. And what you see in front of you here is the sectors of industry. So there are 5 sectors that we talk about: transportation, accommodation, food and beverage services, recreation and entertainment, and travel services. And if you look at these colors, you can see that 2019 was a very busy year for tourism. The province, these are Canadian statistics, but from a provincial perspective, very similar. 2019 was a gangbusters year. It was busy. Employers were struggling to find enough employees to be able to hire, to bring into their positions and service our guests. And then in 2020, of course, like everybody else, the industry was definitely impacted by COVID. We saw a lot of closures. the tourism, the restaurant sector of the industry was, as hotels and restaurants, pardon me, earliest hit and hardest hit. So we've definitely seen a decline in the not only businesses, but the employment area. But if you can see here, the really good news is that our numbers are projected to get back up. We won't be necessarily at 2019 levels for a couple of years, but the good news is that employers are hiring right now. It's not all doom and gloom. There are some employers and there's some businesses that are actually even preparing to launch new businesses come the new year. So from a job seeker, from an employment perspective, I recognize that it is really challenging and it can be very challenging right now. But again, stay focused. The positive is that employers are hiring. I'm happy and I'm proud to say that. You just may have to look a little bit harder to find some of those opportunities. And we'll talk about that and positioning yourself as we go along through the session. Some of the perceptions that are out there that we like to address when we talk about a career awareness in the industry, and I would encourage you to consider this question and go ahead if you want to put a true or false in the chat function there. True or false, tourism employers are willing to hire someone with no previous experience or no prior experience. I'll give you about 2 seconds just to consider that one. And this one here, the answer is actually true. So employers are willing to hire if you don't have previous experience. And you're correct. This is one of the things about the industry is that for many job seekers, tourism job is actually your first job. And I certainly can speak to that from experience. My first job ever was in the BC tourism industry. I worked as a travel counselor in one of the visitor info centers. And I spent a couple of summers doing that. And it was such an amazing opportunity to get to chat and meet with people from all over the place and welcome them to my local community and be able to share information about all that our province has to offer. And then from there, progressing in my own personal career. But that gave me that taste and that first customer service experience and that opportunity to try something new. And for many job seekers, that is the case. Employers will not necessarily need you to have prior experience. A lot of employers in the tourism industry will provide training for you. And there is training that you can get in advance of working in the industry. And we'll talk about that. Things like customer service experience or first aid training or customer service training like Superhost. So there's some great programs out there that can help set you up for that. But know that just because you may not have worked before doesn't mean that there's not opportunities out there for you. There's a way that you can get into the industry and break in. Our next question here that I have for you, true or false, a post-secondary degree is required in order to advance within a career in tourism. Again, I'll just give you a couple of seconds just to think about this. Go ahead if you want to put your response in the chat, that's great. The answer on this one is false. And the post-secondary educations and degrees are absolutely valuable in the industry. And I really want to make sure that point comes across. The requirement piece is not there in order to advance, depending on what positions you're looking at applying for. If you're interested in management positions, if you're interested in senior executive positions, and some supervisory positions, they may require some post-secondary education. That could be a certificate, it could be a diploma, it doesn't necessarily have to be a degree. And certainly having that post-secondary education behind you will help you advance perhaps more quickly than if you don't have it. And certainly some of the more senior positions will require that you have a post-secondary education. But again, it's not required in order to advance. What we find a lot is folks that really have a very strong work ethic that perhaps have taken some other courses or education sessions outside that would help them. So say it's a time management courses or leadership courses. those certainly would count towards showing that you've taken initiative and that you're invested in your career. All right, our last true and false here. True or false, there are no opportunities for skilled trades. So millwrights, mechanics, landscapers, plumbers, boilermakers in tourism. True or false? And I'm going to share with you, that one is actually, we've got a couple of responses, thanks to you that are doing it. Yeah, absolutely, the answer is false. So when we think about tourism, again, think more broadly, think outside of just hotels and restaurants. You think you've got a great snowcat in front of you there, a lot of the ski hills. If you think of heli ski operations, somebody has to fly the helicopters. Somebody has to keep those helicopters in the air. If we think of cruise ships, cruise ships are a city in and of themselves, and they have all of those systems, the HVAC systems and the mechanical systems that need to even keep the ships on the water. So, and much less keep our guests comfortable. So there are a lot of trades positions, again, amongst those 400 occupations in the industry. So, if you're somebody that likes to work behind the scenes and you don't want to be in front of people all the time, but you love working with your hands, there certainly are positions out there and available. I mentioned earlier when we looked at the Tourism HR Canada stats, there are 5 sectors of industry. Food and beverage, primarily when we think food and beverage, think of restaurants, pubs, bars, restaurants, nightclubs. They're all part of the food and beverage sector. Accommodation is really broad. It's not just hotels, but it's hotels, motels. It includes B&Bs as well. And some places have things like yurts, which are like tents, and the glamping. Those are all part of the accommodation sector. Travel services are the folks that are, say, the travel agencies and the visitor centers fall under that sector. Transportation, things like the ferries could fall under that. Flights, air flights, the scenic bus tours, those all fall under transportation. And then recreation and entertainment. Whale watching certainly falls under that category. The SUP rentals, bike rentals, horseback riding, zip lines, those are all the kinds of businesses that we think that are included under that sector. BC is a really big province, and if you look at the map in front of you there, this shows you that there are 6 regions of tourism, and what we refer to as regions. Many of you will be in the Vancouver Coastal Mountains region. I myself am located in Vernon and the Thompson Okanagan region, Vancouver Island, Kootenay Rockies, Cariboo-Chilcotin Coast region, and then Northern BC. So you can see that there are based on these regions, there are lots of opportunities. And when we look at the regions as a career plan and as a job seeker, if you think about each of the regions, they offer very much different opportunities. If you think about Vancouver Island and the Vancouver Coast Mountains, there are a lot of water-related activities, of course, being close to the ocean. Cariboo-Chilcotin Coast region and Northern BC offer the more rural experiences. Thompson Okanagan, a lot of wineries, and again, a bit more of the rural as you go north. And then, of course, the Kootenay Rockies, more of the experiences related to the mountains, related to things like the ski resorts are there as well. Of course, as other regions, but when you think about them, things like river rafting, would be more of a Kootenay Rockies kind of experience from a worker perspective. So again, all of that to say there are lots of opportunities in the tourism industry. Certainly the BC museums are located in each of these 6 regions. And again, the focus of each of the museums from that perspective will be a little bit different based on the region that they're in, and again, the culture and the local communities that they're promoting and supporting. So once you have an idea, you've now looking for a job, you have a better picture, a little bit more of a picture of what it looks like in the BC tourism industry. Let's talk cover letters, and let's start getting into specifics of helping you really help your cover letters and your resume stand out from a crowd. And when we think about cover letters, one of the key things is that cover letters are not a replacement for your resume. Cover letters are a document that you can use to fill in some of the gaps that may be in your resume and help your resume stand out from other job seekers. Right now, there are lots of people that are looking for work. And as we said a few minutes ago, fewer positions currently available, but that doesn't mean that they aren't there and or that you wouldn't be successful in a job search. What this means is that when you use a cover letter and when you tailor your resume, you really need to make sure that you are speaking to the job that you're applying for, that you're highlighting the skills that you have and that you would be able to bring to the job and to the organization that you're applying for. It's that opportunity to sell yourself and tell them why you are the ideal candidate for that job. Here's why you should hire me. And invite them to reach out and connect with you, and invite an interview. This isn't the time to be shy. You don't want to be overbearing, but you also want to be sure that, they know you're passionate, that you're interested, that you're qualified for the job. And your cover letter can help you do that. There is a tried and true tested format that you can follow for your cover letter, and I'm going to walk you through that now. One of the things that you want to make sure that your cover letter and your resume reflect is your personal and your contact information. One of the things that I would encourage is whatever format or font you use in your resume, transition that and use that in your cover letters as well, because then there's a consistency between the two documents. It looks like it's the same person. So me as the hiring manager, I see a cover letter and I see a resume. It just helps me connect the dots that those two belong together. I can't say and stress enough the contact information. Make sure it's at the top of both of your cover letter and your resume, but make it professional. I still unfortunately see some of those hotguy21@gmail.com email addresses. Change your email, create one that's specifically for your job search. If you haven't already done that, make sure you do that. And again, it helps present that level of professionalism moving forward. Your greeting. So when you greet, it's fine to say dear hiring manager, but if there is on the job posting, if there is a contact name, if you can do some research into the position in the organization that's hiring and you can find a name for that manager, it's always nice to be able to personalize your greeting in your cover letter and address that person directly. In your opening paragraph, so typically a cover letter would be about 2-3 paragraphs, and then your closing. Your first opening paragraph really reconfirm the job that you're applying for. I'd like to submit my candidacy, or please accept my resume and application for the guest service agent position at the Holiday Inn. Okay, whatever position that is that you are applying for. And I can't stress enough, make sure that you are tailoring your cover letters. Templates are okay. It's fine to create a template cover letter, but make sure that you are customizing it for the position that you're applying for. The reason that I say this is I was recently going through a couple of hundred applications and resumes, cover letters for a position of recruitment. And one of the cover letters stood out to me, but not for the right reason. It was for the reason that the person that applied for the job actually mentioned the wrong job on the cover letter. So I actually wasn't sure that he was applying for the job that I was actually screening for. So make sure that the information that you have in your cover letter is accurate. Use that first paragraph to reconfirm and help your cover letter jump out by sharing a couple of key accomplishments that you have done, or positions or experience that you've had relevant to that position. So if it's a frontline customer service position, then you may want to share a couple of words about, the experience that you've had. I spent last summer working in this position and I gained strong customer service skills in these specific areas. Again, it just helps that hiring manager see, okay, this person has what I'm looking for. Now I'm going to read a little bit further and make a point of making sure that I pay attention to this one. In your second and third paragraphs, your second paragraph, you want to tell them why you're the ideal candidate. So here are a few things that specifically you can pull out of the cover letters, out of the job posting. So when you are reading that job posting, that's a really good source of information for you to know exactly what the employer is looking for. If they specify customer service experience, if they specify attention to detail, if they call out, the ability to manage address problems or conflict resolution, then these are specific things that you should be mentioning in your cover letter. If they apply to you and you have experience in those areas, help the employer see that you have that experience. Draw it out. You don't want to repeat exactly what you have in your resume, but highlight some of those key skills that you have that they should know about. The other part of this as well in this second paragraph is if you have any gaps in your resume, if you took some time off to do a career change, if you are in the midst of a career change and you're shifting and you've been working in a different industry for a number of years and now you want to try something different, there are what are called transferable skills. Lots of skills like customer service is a great example to say, if you worked frontline in the, at a hospital, if you worked frontline in retail, and now you want to go and work at the front line in a museum, or you want to work in a hotel, then you've got lots of strong skills potentially that you can make sure that you mention in your cover letter and in your resume that will apply to this position. So help the hiring manager make that connection between your previous experience and how you're a great fit for this job that you're applying for. You don't necessarily need a third paragraph, but if you go into that detail, do your research, find out a little bit more about the company that you want to work for and tell them why you're a great fit for that company. If you're somebody that is passionate about community, you're passionate about sharing your local culture, or you enjoy working with individuals, or you're a really strong team player, those may be things that the employer is looking for. And that's your opportunity to really reinforce and say, hey, I've got the skills for the job. And you know what? I would make a great contribution to your team. In your closing, again, not a time to be shy. Ask for the interview. Let them know that you're available. I saw a really great line recently on a cover letter, and it said, you know what? I would love to have further conversations with you. Please feel free to text me or to email me because my availability may be limited based on my current position. My availability to answer the phone might be limited. So feel free to text or email and I can respond more quickly. So certainly in this day and age when we know people have lots going on, help us as recruiters be able to track you down, provide that information for them. So that is cover letters. And again, that first glance and that opportunity to open the door, share with that hiring manager what it is you have to bring to the job. And that, I think one thing that I would like to mention about cover letters is that not having a cover letter, certainly not everybody has them, but I would encourage you to have one because that really is your extra opportunity to sell yourself. So with cover letters, now that you can write a great cover letter, let's give you some tips to make that resume stand out. And I've pulled together, there's 6 tips that really come to mind when it comes to resumes. And those tips, we'll walk through each of them as we go through, but really, number 1, pay attention to the details. Keep it brief and focused. Keep it organized. Highlight relevant experience and training. Mention your interests and hobbies, and avoid getting too personal. So let's walk through each one of these. Paying attention to the details. When I talk about this, lots of folks would think right away about spelling and grammar and, making sure that those things are addressed. I would also encourage you to pay attention to the details of the job posting itself and make sure that your resume speaks to the skills, the training, and the abilities that they are looking for in the job. Job postings will provide a good amount of information for you and tell you exactly what the employer is looking for. Bear in mind that employers will sometimes shoot for the sky. They want the ideal candidate. They want somebody with 3 years of experience. They want somebody, perhaps this one requires a post-secondary degree. Perhaps it requires a specific certification. As a job seeker, don't be shy to apply for positions that you maybe have 90% of the qualifications that you're qualified for. And if there's 1 or 2 things that you don't have that the employer is asking for, I would still encourage you to apply. And perhaps you have a transferable skill that could be related to that skill, and call that out in your resume. Okay. Employers, again, they will advertise for a position and want the best, most qualified person for that position, and that's the way that the job postings will be written. But if you have almost all of the criteria, maybe you bring something else from your background and your experience to the position as well. So still apply for the job, even if you don't meet 100% of that. But pay attention to those details, research the job, research the company. And then ask yourself, does your cover letter and your resume speak to what those requirements are that the employer has said in the posting? Again, make sure that there's alignment there. I thought I would share with you a couple of examples of just basics that do still, believe it or not, they do still happen out there. Make sure you use your word processing computer and pay attention to the squiggly lines, pay attention to the indicators that something's perhaps not spelled correctly, or look at the alignment. So stand back from the page and just really have a look. There's a mystery A that's appearing on this list of skills for this individual, and of course there's a spelling error there. And again, sometimes it's the very small details, things like the big red obvious personality, I can't even say it, typo there. But the other one is, if you really look at the fine details, you see that this period is out of alignment with the rest of the above bullet points. And know that 77% of recruiters really will reject a resume if it has typos and bad grammar in it. And it's important. Some recruiters will stop reading if there's enough errors in grammar, spelling, typos. They actually will not. Your resume would actually be screened out. They wouldn't go any further with it. And if you think back to tourism and hospitality, when you think about museums, a lot of detail in museums, whether that's setting up artifacts, whether that's doing and presenting publications, making sure that those attention to the details, even down to the little periods, will make a difference. And one of the positions I will often think about is a housekeeping position in a hotel property. When I was recruiting for hotels, that was one thing that I looked for in resumes. If I was hiring somebody to be a housekeeper, I need them to be focused on those and hyper-focused on details. Every last detail in that room just needed to be just so for our guests. I needed to make sure that their resumes were presenting and showing me that they had that attention to detail. So without me even asking a question, I've answered one question on my screening list. Do they have attention to detail? Tip number 2 is really around keeping it brief and keeping it focused. No more than 2 pages. I recently saw a resume that was 7 pages long. It was way too long, and really a lot of unnecessary information. If somebody is looking at your resume, they are going to probably scan the first 2 pages. After that, if it starts looking like this, it gets to be a bit much. This, of course, is an example outside of tourism, but this doesn't need to be enlarged for you to be able to see all of the details and know that this is just way too much to be put on a resume. Make sure that you're focused on the specifics. Call out the one or two points that you would like to highlight based on your skills and your experience and your training. And, you don't need to list every position for the last 10 years in there, but highlight the ones that are relevant to the job that you're looking for. One of the things that I do like about this one is the area on the left there in that column, and I'm starting to see more of it in resumes, is this little gradient or this little graphic just around specific skills or languages. It's really nice as a recruiter, as a hiring manager, to be able to see things like that because it breaks up the monotony of a resume and it just helps some of those key things jump out. And as a job seeker, that's a really cool tool that you could use from a formatting perspective just to make some of those things jump out for you. You've heard me talk a lot about relevant experience in education and training. Again, I can't stress this enough. Make sure that your resume is aligned with the posting that employers are looking for. Don't just look at the job title, read right into that posting and look at the specifics that they're looking for. If this is a first job, if you've never worked in industry before, if you've never worked before, know that experience doesn't have to just come from paid positions and previous work experience. Feel free, and I would encourage you to include volunteer experience. If you have done volunteer positions at your school and you've led a school committee, if you have participated in a community activity and were part of a group, a community event or an organizing event, if you were frontline at an event, from a service perspective, that's all valuable experience. And again, it doesn't have to be paid experience in order for you to be able to put it on your resume and help it stand out and have that valuable experience that you can bring to a paid position in any industry, not just tourism. Education and training, as we said before, it's valuable. It doesn't necessarily have to be post-secondary, but the more training that you have, it certainly can help bolster your resume, help position you ahead of other job seekers that may not have some of the training that's recognized. Here in front of you, I've posted 4 industry recognized training programs. Superhost, for anybody that isn't aware, Superhost is a customer service training program that we offer through GoToHR, and it's an industry recognized program and a certification that you could acquire ahead of applying for positions or as you're applying for positions. And know that certainly if you're Superhost certified, then industry employers will see that. It's again a recognized recognized certification, and it would help you stand out over other job seekers that may not have that certification. Others that you see there, Food Safe, for anyone that is interested in working with food and food handling. There's also a Market Safe program if you're looking at working in markets. The Foundations of Workplace Safety is a program, again, that we offer through GoToHR, and that is really about safety basics and understanding the basic level of health and safety, what it is and what that means to you as a worker in, and again, any industry, not just the tourism and hospitality industry, but also any industry, and helping you be safe and know what your responsibilities are as an employee, as a worker in a workplace in BC. And then the Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System, or WHMIS, is a program that's focused around working with chemicals and reading chemical sheets and understanding how to safely handle and store and use chemicals. Again, a lot of employers will provide training for you once you're working in a position. But the more you can bring to a job ahead of time, then these skills and these training will help set you ahead of others. And it also shows to a hiring manager that you're dedicated to advancing yourself within a career, and that you're interested in investing in yourself. If you have and you've taken training outside of the job, then it shows me that you've got the drive and the initiative to invest in yourself and sharpen your skills for your career and the plan that you have. Our next tip that I wanted to share with you is really looking at your resume and having it be an organized format. For many job seekers, again, if this is a first job or if you've had a few positions, a chronological format will make the most sense for you. If you do a Google search on resumes, you'll see that there are a number of different formats and styles of resumes. Important to choose one that works for you as an individual, but then also for the position that you're applying for. There's lots of, again, there's no right or wrong format. There's preferred formats that you would want to look at. And actually, I stalled when I said wrong format because I'm going to share one with you in just a minute that you would want to perhaps steer clear from. But think about the person that's reading it. Think about, particularly right now, a lot of employers are very busy. They are having to make lots of changes to their businesses and how they do business based in response to COVID. But just at the best of times, employers are busy. They need people for positions or they wouldn't be hiring. And sometimes that means that they're going to be extra busy. So help them understand your resume, be organized, use headers, make sure that when you're listing your experiences and your dates and your education, have it be chronological. And what I mean by that is list your most recent first and then work backwards. Again, you don't have to list the last 10, 15 years of experiences, but narrow it down to those that are most relevant, and then use your cover letter to speak to any gaps that are there. Use headings and make sure that you limit the use of fonts, colors, and sizes. Be creative. You can certainly show some personality. Know that you don't want it to look too busy. And the other piece is that now a lot of employers, particularly the larger ones, are asking you to submit resumes via online application tools and apps. And in some cases, any formatting that you use to do that would actually be scrubbed out. So they would only see a very basic text format in some cases. So again, use fonts that are pretty common, things like Times New Roman or Arial. Again, are pretty standard fonts, but just I encourage you, don't get too carried away in being too much creative if it's not particularly if it's not a creative position that you're applying for. Okay. I thought I would share with you just a couple of examples. Robert Smith here, again, just a sample resume. You can see at a glance, I know exactly who is applying. I know exactly what position he's applying for. I've got his contact information there. It's clean. It is, it's professional. And the skills section is great because in that section, I can quickly scan and see that, oh yeah, you know what? I was looking for customer focused. I was looking for somebody that's customer focused, that had inventory control, that has excellent time management, right? Though that little paragraph there, you can pull those skills, chances are, right out of the job posting. So if they apply to you, mention them there. The work experience piece, again, I can see very, quickly, I can see exactly what positions he's held. I can see where he's held them, what those dates were. You notice that those dates are current and working backwards. And then there's a list of the key responsibilities that he did within each of those positions. All of that information is giving me that picture to paint how Robert Smith is going to be a really great candidate for the job and for potentially our organization. Let me show you another one. This is our friend Tim, again, a sample resume, but again, you can see that there are dates on there. It's just a different layout. You can see that graphic representation of skills, languages. This person happens to have some software in there. He's got his education, his training is listed again in chronological order, and then some accolades. So, again, these are great examples of resumes. If you don't have accolades and you wanted to use a layout like this instead of that recognition accolades section, you might want to include a volunteer section. And so certainly they can be adjusted based on what your needs are, but this gives a great a great picture and some conversation some conversation pieces. I, as an interviewer, then can hone in and say, oh, looks like he's got pretty strong leadership skills, but he's particularly strong in interpersonal skills. So, I can then ask some questions if that relates to the position that he's applying for. I can ask more questions around that. Again, help the recruiter see. I wanted to share you this, and I know we're coming through the time here. So, Lorinda, I'm coming towards the end of it here. Got a couple more points. Just wanted to share with you this little quirky resume. Again, when I talk about creativity, this is a bit over the top. This person's actually applying for a computer science and mathematics position, if you believe that. Again, keep it relevant. This is fun, but again, it's going to get screened out pretty quickly. A couple of last tips. Mention your hobbies and interests. That certainly could be a section that you add around that volunteer position, or add a section called hobbies and interests. What that shows me as a recruiter is that you have a life outside of work. You have different interests and passions, and perhaps some of those will bring you some skills that you can help apply, again, back to that position that you are applying for. The last tip that I'm going to share with you here is just avoid getting too personal on your resume. I still see resumes with photos on them. I still see, and sometimes I have seen some resumes that are mentioning marital status, and they're mentioning social insurance numbers and passport numbers and things like that. Avoid any of that information. Keep it to the professional level, where you're just providing your name and your contact information, and feel free, add a LinkedIn link. If you have a LinkedIn profile, feel free to add that, because recruiters can then refer to that as well. Make sure that you've got a good LinkedIn profile set up if you're doing so, and that it speaks to the resume. You don't want to have somebody click on your LinkedIn profile and it look completely different from your resume. Make sure that there's alignment there. But again, keep it professional. And then the key takeaways here from just the resumes is again, researching, keeping it brief, use the job posting, and then the cover letter to fill in the gaps. Let's touch on video interviews. And again, I'm going to give this presentation to Lorinda, so feel free. She will send this information out to you. And really, when it comes to video interviews, there are a few things that are going to be different from sitting in front of somebody for an interview. The really important pieces that I wanted to stress for video interviewing is that before the video interview, make sure that you do a test run of your equipment. Make sure that you've got a professional background happening. Make sure that you're dressing for success. You may, when you're doing a video interview, if you're going to be sitting the entire time, you might have shorts on, like we've seen in some of the webinar examples, and we've heard about that. But make sure that your presentation is professional. Pretend in your mind that you're sitting in front of that individual when you're going to be having that conversation with them, and present yourself in the same manner. One thing you want to do when you're about to have the interview is make sure that you sign in a few minutes early. Make sure that you are still aware of your body language, and look into the camera. So looking around, looking to the sides, know that they're going to be watching you and paying attention to you. So give them your undivided attention as well. One of the neat things about video interviews is that, certainly you may have a few more notes than you might have if you were sitting directly in front of somebody. So I would encourage you to have some Post-its in front of you, or some little bullet point notes of things that you want to make sure that you mention that are really critical, that you want to make sure that the employer is aware of before the end of the interview. And then really focus on answering their questions. The very last thing, as far as interviews, whether again that you're sitting in front of the hiring manager or it's done by video, is that send a thank you. And that could be just a really quick little email thank you. Appreciate your time. People are busy, and better yet, if you had the opportunity and you want to make a trip to the post the post box and pop a little written thank you card in the mail. That's one that is something that we started to see pre-COVID, that I saw a lot of employers. I actually had some mentioning to me that they actually got a real card in the mail, and that was a big thing. It's something that, again, it stands out. People get emails all the time. If you can send a written thank you card, that's going to help make you and your name stand out of the pile of the candidates. And finally, I just wanted to wrap up here with some building blocks. Again, education and experience are key and critical, any kind of job that you're applying for. But put some thought to your career and where you'd like to see your career go. We have a career network, a career awareness section on the Go2HR website that really, if you're interested in working in tourism, whether that's museums or it's another sector of the industry, you can actually go through and see some examples of positions. And there's, again, they speak to a range of industry positions. And then each one of them, you can actually click on those and see all of the skills and education that would be required for that kind of position, what the potential career track could be for that position. So, there is definitely information on the Go2HR website. Networking is key, and in a lot of cases, it's not what you know, but it's who you know, and that certainly still is the case and can be the case. So get out there and network, and networking these days is a lot of it's done virtually, but if you have opportunity to attend events, attend job fairs that will again start up in the spring, then I would encourage you to do so. And the Go2HR website, we have not only our job board, which I'm showing you here, but we have an events calendar that you can click on at any time, and it will actually show you a list of not only training activities and events that are coming up, but also a list of job fairs that are happening as well. So I would encourage you to have a look at, again, the Go2HR job board, as well as our website. It's go2hr.ca. The career awareness section that I just mentioned is in this section, find a job /career. You can find all of that information there. So with that, I know I've not left a whole lot of time, Lorinda, but were there any questions that anybody had? I'm more than happy to answer them.
Sure, I'm just going to take over the screen just for one quick sec, just to remind folks, if you have any questions, you can use the chat function. There's my slide. You can use the chat function or the Q&A function to pose your question. And while we're waiting for some questions to come through, I had one I wanted to pose to you, Ginger. Sure. I don't think you covered it in the session, so my apologies if you did. If I am applying for a job where I am underqualified, but extremely passionate, do you have any tips on how to communicate that in my cover letter? I feel like I wouldn't be the right direction to acknowledge how underqualified I am, but I'm not sure. So I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple of thoughts on that one. If you're completely underqualified and you meet absolutely none of the criteria that the employer is looking for, then I would perhaps consider trying to advance your skills, like maybe take some training, maybe get some education in that direction, if that's the kind of position that you're looking for. The other is that perhaps there's a step before that position that you could explore. So I think like a sales manager position, when I worked in hotels, a lot of folks would apply for the sales management position, but they wouldn't have enough experience for that manager's position. So I would encourage them to apply for the sales and marketing coordinator position, because in that position, they would get to understand more about sales and marketing. They would get some exposure to what the manager did and be able to train and advance potentially into that role. So, again, see where you can start and maybe advance into that position. If you don't have the criteria, then maybe consider getting it. Or the third perspective would be maybe you have some transferable skills, like I said, from a different industry that could be relevant to that position, but use your cover letter to help connect the dots for that hiring manager. If you've worked in an industry that's completely different from where you're applying now, you might have to help them see how that relates. Does that answer that for you, Lauren?
That does. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just going to wait and see if any other questions come in through the chat or Q&A. So please post your question there if you have any. While we're waiting, so I have another question. I was curious if you know of any places that would be good places to look at sample resumes for templates, or is there a good platform that you know that could be used to make a nice and tidy but not overwhelming resume?
You know what? There are so many. There's so many out there. I would almost be hesitant to recommend one over one or two over the other. I would almost say, you know what? Even Word has some formats. You know, if you're using MS Word, you can go in and create a new document, and they actually would have resume outlines in there as well. So, you know, I think once you get your information drafted for your resume, then you can copy and paste that into any format.
Thank you. And again, as I'm still waiting for more questions and Q&A to be posed, I have another one for
Sure.
you. One that I've struggled with when I've been writing a cover letter or a resume, also even just in interviews, is that I have a really hard time separating the work I have done from my teamwork. Do you have any tips for other people like me on how to communicate that in my resume or even in the interview, or just some reminders for us when we're in our interviews, the role I played versus the role of a team member?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? That's a great point. Some of the resumes I was screening recently gave acknowledgement to, you know, the team accomplishing a sales increase of, 30%. And then they would underneath that say, here's my contribution and what I did for that, right? So I was responsible for the social media component of that project, just as an example. So, you know, I think there's two things to that. Feel free, mention a team accomplishment because it shows that you contribute within a team. If you can identify some of the specifics that you did within that accomplishment, that's great. Whether you call that out in your resume or you prepare to speak to that in the interview. The third is be careful in taking credit for a team accomplishment as an individual. So I've seen some cases where somebody said, oh yeah, the sales, I increased the sales by 300% over the last fiscal. Well, okay, so how did you do that? And if you did that, fantastic, but be prepared to speak to that and be able to, and know that the recruiter, the hiring manager is probably going to say, well, how did you accomplish that? And what did you do directly on that?
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I don't see anything coming through, so that must tell me that this was a really comprehensive webinar that covered everyone's questions, or maybe a few folks had the same questions I had. I hope, I know this isn't my realm, but the thing that I found most helpful when I was filling out my most recent resume and cover letter was that I talked to my current supervisor. They knew that I was looking for a new job, and I asked them on how they would describe my work, and just had them help me with some of those struggles I was having. So I know that's not going to help with everyone because some people don't have that opportunity, but I just wanted to share that. Thank you so much, Ginger, for joining us. Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up today?
I think just would like to thank everybody for attending today. If you have any questions, then feel free. I will share that presentation with Lorenda. She can send it out to you. My contact information is on there. Reach out and certainly visit the Go2HR job board and the career awareness section. Loads of information there for you. And best of luck in your job searches.
Thank you so much, Ginger.
Thanks, Lorenda. Thanks for having me.
It's been wonderful. And I want to thank everyone who's been joining us today for this webinar. Thank you so much. I do want to encourage you to join us for one last thing we've got going on in December. On Wednesday, December 16th from 5 p.m. until 6 p.m., we'll be doing a very special edition of our Watercolor Wednesdays. We're hosting a little virtual holiday party. The details are on our website, so do check that out. No registration required. Just log on in at 5 p.m. And please remember, if you have any suggestions for topics in 2021 or wish to present a webinar yourself, you can email me, Lorenda, at programs@museumsassn.bc.ca. And please do fill out the survey that will be in your inbox shortly. Filling out the survey helps us decide on what future webinars, workshops can look like, and to better support you. If you get an email and the link is not working, please email me at that email address. Again, programs@museumsassn.bc.ca, so I can get you set up with the correct link. And do consider joining us in 2021 and beyond by becoming a member of the BC Museums Association. By becoming a member, you have funding opportunities, free webinar participation, reduced registration fees, access to professional development resources, and so much more. Thank you again, Ginger, for joining us. Thank you for all of our webinar attendees, and I hope you have a very wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.